Hey guys, welcome to another episode. My guest today needs no introduction, but I'll do it anyway. Greg Mercer, the CEO and founder of Jungle Scout, which is one of the best Amazon analytics software in the market. They have over 500,000 active users. So if you're selling on Amazon, I'm sure you use Jungle Scout unless you live under the trees for the last 8 years. But other than that, I don't know anybody personally who's selling on Amazon and haven't used Jungle Scout. Today we're going to talk about AI when selling on Amazon. It's a very hot topic, so we're going to give you some tips how to use it. We're also going to talk how to build $1 million business on Amazon in 2023. Greg did some amazing case studies all over the years called $1 million case studies. So we're going to talk about that and dig deeper into his amazing journey. I know he gave lots of interviews over the years, so I will do my best not to repeat. So it's interesting for him and for you guys. Other than that, let's go. Greg, welcome.
Anatoly, thank you so much for having me on. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Same here, same here. I want to start with when you were 14 years old. One of the stories that you shared quite a few times was how there were those electric scooters, and you built a key for those electric scooters, and then you faxed a brochure to scooter companies to sell them your keys, and you would sell hundreds of them. I think that's a great story, but I have a little bit a different question that maybe everybody else. I have two kids myself. I would like them to be as entrepreneurial as Greg when they grow up. So, what are some of the key lessons your parents instill in you that allow you to, I guess, be that creative?
Yeah, it's a great question. I just had my first kid 18 months ago, so I've been thinking a lot about this. So I'm glad that you asked it.
Congrats.
Thank you. And my parents both got laid off around like the dot com bubble around 2000. And I think my dad got a kind of a nice severance package with that. And he had the opportunity to start his own business. Before that, they were both working for different companies. And I think, I don't think they realized that at the time, but that was pretty kind of like instrumental in me seeing what was possible. I think there's been tons of case studies and all kinds of things about um, children believe that they can do whatever their parents do or have done, and things that they don't know that anyone has done before, they believe to be like very challenging or very difficult. So honestly, I think the top thing that we can do for our children to help them be entrepreneurial is just show them like what's possible and talk to them about it and let them know that we're starting our own businesses and that there are many different paths that you can take in life. And one of those is, kind of like being your own boss and starting your own thing. So that's what I'm going to try to really instill in my son.
Do your parents involve you in their business at any point? Did you help them out, or how was it?
Yeah, great question. They did a little bit. They had me do kind of like grunt work. So my parents actually started an e-commerce company, and this was the very early days of e-commerce.
Oh
My
wow.
mom was a nurse practitioner, and she kind of had this specialty for children who wet the bed at night. And they kind of put together a package for to help children who are wetting the bed stop doing so. And they ran a little fulfillment center out of our garage. This is before Amazon, FBA, or even most of the third party fulfillment networks as we know them today were around. So they would just have me help pack boxes, or my job would be kind of just like to fold up the boxes and tape them up to get them ready to ship out. Beyond that, they didn't really involve me in the business too much, but I think there was more influence than what they realized by them just in front of me, like at the dinner table, talking about the business and talking about the challenges that they had. And a lot of times, honestly, it was just complaining, like complaining about a bad employee or complaining about challenges they were going through.
Yeah.
And I don't think they intended for those to be lessons for me, but just like kind of through osmosis or through a byproduct, they actually were really valuable lessons for me.
Beautiful, beautiful. We're gonna get back to your story in a second, but let's talk about AI for a second. 2023 is a year of AI. Everybody is talking about it. It's like a high topic that on the mouths of anybody I meet. Um, and Amazon is no different. So, in your opinion, in 2023, how can Amazon sellers leverage AI tools to sell on Amazon?
Yeah, it's the technological leaps in generative AI in the past year have been pretty remarkable. And I think one of the coolest things about it is prior to really like OpenAI coming out with ChatGPT, there was quite a bit of cool stuff with machine learning and AI, but it wasn't very accessible to the general public. You had to be like a very technical engineer and probably know Python and things like that to be able to really harness it. And then kind of like OpenAI's invention of the chat interface to be able to just speak with generative AI, I think is really what helped this kind of like take this next leap forward. And I, other people have used this analogy before, but I'm going to use it too because I really like it. I think it's kind of like the invention of the calculator.
Yeah,
Prior to that, um, the people were doing long division by hand, and it was very ineffective and took a very long time. And then all of a sudden, they had this tool to make them like 50 times more productive than what they were without it. And I really think that generative AI is along the same lines as far as like a productivity leap.
yeah,
And what's so cool about it is there's like endless amount of ways to use it. At Jungle Scout, we've incorporated some of these new ways, but even without it, anything from any kind of content creation, it's great for, creating new photos and helping with that. And I find myself using it just for all kinds of little tasks day to day, whether that's helping me write, sales copy for something or asking it questions where I think it will give a better response than what Google would, or helping me just a few days ago. I was kind of just giving a talk to the company and I was helping it. I was really using it, helping like brainstorm with me about different things that I could talk about or kind of like how to structure my talk. And it was really useful for that. So I could go on and on for kind of hours about this, but from a high level, I think we all need to harness this new tool instead of like pushing it off or being kind of like dismissive of it,
yeah.
and thinking about all the little ways that it can make us more productive and free up our time to be doing kind of the more impactful or new, more innovative things in our business.
Yeah, we use that for podcast production. We use about 10 AI tools that saved us. We
Nice.
we went from like 10 people stuff to like 3 people stuff, and it just the output is like 10 times more. So I'm completely with you. I know that I was doing some research on how it helps Amazon sellers. One of them was review analysis. Like you can put bunch of reviews in ChatGPT, let's say, and say, analyze what are some of the low points and some of the high points of that. Have
Mhm.
you know anybody experienced that, or does Jungle Scout allow that?
Jungle Scout actually just 2 weeks ago released some functionality where you can just paste in a link or an ASIN and it will read through all the reviews and summarize them. And it's kind of like preset to call out different things like what's good about this product, what's bad about it, what are some ways that you can make improvements to it, or what are opportunities for you to kind of create something similar but better. So it's pretty cool. I mean, you could do something kind of similar just with ChatGPT, but you have to kind of go through all the different reviews and copy and paste them in there.
Yeah,
And Jungle Scout's latest AI assist with the review analysis just makes that way easier by automatically importing all those reviews and kind of doing that analysis for you. So it's pretty sweet. Like I said, it's only been out for a couple weeks, and the amount of early adoption that we've got with it has been pretty remarkable.
yeah, beautiful. The other area that a lot of people are struggling with the keyword research. So, do you think there
Mhm.
is opportunity for AI to help with keyword research?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, it is. Let's see. I think there are, I mean, you can actually just ask ChatGPT recommendations for keywords or what keywords people associate with different types of products, and it works pretty well for. In Jungle Scout, one of the things that we've built in is the it can you can actually speak with a chatbot to help you do keyword research. And
Yeah,
what's cool about it is the chatbot is aware of the search volume and a number of other metrics associated with all the different keywords. So it can actually make smarter responses than what, say, OpenAI can, because it's a generative AI model, but it also has all of the keyword search volume data and like all the data that Jungle Scout has, and it uses that to inform its responses. And same thing, it works pretty dang well. I continue to be impressed by it, and it's one of those things like we were talking about earlier that it's like it can just make you so much more efficient and effective. Tasks that used to take people hours and hours
Yeah,
can now be done like a few minutes with the help of it. So it's pretty awesome.
for sure. And when let's say ChatGPT as it evolves, it's going to get better and better. Right now, we're finding that sometimes it gives you some weird responses. So I would always double check what it says. But in
Mhm.
general, it still saves you time and gives you ideas. Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's not to the point yet where you can just, like, fully hands off, let it just,
yeah,
like, write things for you without looking through it, but I think about it as something that can get you, say, 80 or 90% of the way there, and then, you can use, your human brain, which is still smarter, to kind of, like, make those fine adjustments or tweaks.
beautiful. I mean, the obvious part is of course description and all the other things that is text based. But I think the interesting opportunity is the product research or product ideas. Um,
Mhm.
how do you see that as AI helping to generate product ideas?
Yeah, I think it's great for that. Um, it's like, one of the things I'm really excited a bit about at Jungle Scout and something that I've been personally working on for the past, like, 3 or 4 months with some of our engineering teams is, like, how can we rethink all of the different tasks that our customers are trying to get done? So, like, their different pain points or needs or problems, and how can we, like, rethink to the outcome they're trying to get to or their problem that they're trying to solve, and, like, how can we use all of this data and information analytics that we have, layer on generative AI on top of that to make, something that's, like, would be way better than any of those things individually. So, for example, we've trained our, like, AI chatbot to be able to access all of our product research data, similar to the keyword data, and you can start to have a conversation about it and say, like, I'm interested in selling this kind of product, or what type of product is similar to this that I could potentially sell. And you can start having conversations with it about, what types of improvements would I need to make to it? What types of improvements are customers looking for? There's all kinds of, like, different cool things you can do like that. And what's so cool about AI is that since it's not like individual lines of code that are being written to give you these types of responses, is a lot of times it, like, still surprises me, which is what's so
Yeah,
cool.
yeah,
Like, I'll call it old fashioned programming. It was lines of code that took care of all these different scenarios. Whereas fast forward to today, it's instead like this neural net that, like, you don't even fully understand all of the possibilities until you start playing with it, which is awesome.
yeah. It's a black box for you where you send a bunch of data. It does. I mean, the big companies that train those language models, they sort of have an idea how it works, but then it evolves so fast, so it teaches itself that they're like not sure. As a software
Mhm.
developer, I've been 12 years doing software. I'm like fascinated by that because even with coding, right now you can just say to ChatGPT, "Here's my code. How can you optimize it?" And it gives you, and you're like, "Wow, I've been coding for 12
Mhm.
years. I had no idea you could do that." So it's
Mhm.
like a personal coach in anything you can.
Yeah.
And I'm sure with like selling on Amazon, that's just like a gold mine. If somebody's not using it, they'll be behind very, very quickly now.
Mhm.
But
Absolutely, I agree.
I mean, the big problem, I guess, it's a problem and an opportunity, but I'm curious to hear your opinion. And everybody has the access to same tools, right? So I guess it levels the play field. So first people who start using it probably longer time ago is some first people who start buying Bitcoin or first people who start doing this and that. They all get the most benefit. But in general, it will equal out very, very quickly. And the fear is that because everybody using same tool, that the information will be like there's less creativity because well it generates in a certain way in certain style most of the time. So all the there's a fear that many Amazon listings will look the same and it will be harder to compete because everything sort of start to look very kind of generic, if you know what I mean. what's your
Mhm.
what's your opinion on that?
I think it's a great thought experiment, something that I've been thinking a lot about recently. And I heard a lot of the same fears when Jungle Scout first came out. It's like
Yeah.
going on close to a decade ago now. And prior to Jungle Scout coming out, there was no information about like how well products sold on Amazon or how anything about keyword information or like really consumer behavior on Amazon. It didn't exist, which is pretty crazy to think about. And I remember when Jungle Scout first came out, there was kind of like this almost panic with a
Yeah.
certain group of people that like now that we know how well all the products sell on Amazon, it's really going to level the playing field. I don't have my competitive advantage anymore. And while that's a little bit true to a certain extent, what I've come to realize over the years is any just like any market, this is going to be an ever evolving and maturing landscape that we're working in. And I think it's a little bit almost kind of naive to think that it's not going to change and like tools to help people aren't going to continue to innovate and evolve. And instead, I think we all need to approach it with this mindset that we all need to continue to learn and continue to be aware of what things are out there to help us kind of like get that competitive edge. And I think it's less about like whether something's out or not, and more so about whether or not people are like continuing to adapt the latest and greatest to kind of like give them the competitive edge. Because the truth of it, at the end of the day, a lot of people are pretty slow to adapt and are pretty resistant to change.
For sure.
So I think those that are not and are continuing to learn and are continuing to kind of use these new tools in their tool chest to get kind of that competitive edge, those are the ones that honestly have always done pretty well as entrepreneurs and small businesses, and I think that's who will continue to do so.
Yeah, I asked you a question for you because you're one of the most qualified people to answer because exactly Jungle Scout
Mm,
changed the landscape where everybody was like, well, if it's in Jungle Scout, everybody knows about it. But then people made millions of dollars using Jungle Scout to sell their products. It's just how do you use the tool? And you can't rely on one tool alone. You need to also have creativity and all those kind of things. So I'm completely with you
totally.
on that. The question I have, is there any AI tools apart from the obvious ChatGPT that I think is like 80% of the market? Like when people say AI, now it means ChatGPT. So any other tools that you guys are using in Jungle Scout or in your personal business that you really like?
Yeah, great question. Um, there are there are a number of different ones that I've used, like Midjourney, and you talked about ones you're using for podcasting. We use Descript from time to time, which is pretty cool for like
This is the
enhancing
best.
audio.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. They've done a really great job with it. But as far as kind of what I'm most excited about, and this is probably partially because it's kind of what I've been working on, where I've been spending a lot of my time, but it's been around fine tuning models for very specific use cases. So, this is kind of what underlies a lot of the recent functionality that Jungle Scout has produced. We found that like if you just go in and use chat gpt and ask it things like whatever, help me write a title or ask it about keywords and optimize them or something like that, the responses that you get are okay. They're like um, adequate, but they're not great.
Yeah.
And what we found is kind of what's like so great and one of the biggest downfalls with chat gpt is it's a such a generalist, right? It knows a little bit about everything,
Yeah.
but it's not that great at being a master of anything. So what we found is by fine tuning models for very specific use cases and training it to be really great on that, that you can like 10x the quality of the responses, which is pretty cool. So um, that partially answers your question about like what we're using, but I wanted to share that because I think this is where kind of a lot of it's heading is
Yeah.
that, like OpenAI opened up this thing that's a really, really great generalist and it's so cool. But then if we think about how to make tools or what tools to use that are really excellent at something, I think we'll start to see a lot more specialized ones.
Yeah, that's a beauty of AI. That I agree with you. I think the future is very specialized AIs with the companies have big data sets, which I guess
Mhm.
one of the big benefits of your company, you collected data for so long that you can just push that data to the AI and say, this is the titles, these titles that sell a lot. And now if
Mhm.
somebody asks, they can generate good titles, which is a big competitive advantage. And on the
Mhm.
other hand, the availability of AI learning uh, infrastructure is it's so available these days. Do you have any fears that because there's so many competitors these days on the market that are constantly mining the data from Amazon, that it will be very hard for you to compete because, well, those APIs for the machine learning to AI tools, they're available to everybody. Um,
Mhm.
because for people who don't know, I'm just gonna do a quick side note. There's like to train the model costs like billions of dollars to train the model how to start learning. So those models are
Mhm.
trained by like maybe 5 companies in the world, and then all the other companies around they're using those models and feeding them data for very specialized reason. So that's why feeding is like a putting cherry on top of already very nice cake, which is
Mhm.
beautiful. But the thing that you need is to have access to the big data. Um, so I guess back to my question, in competitive landscape now, assuming that a lot of companies out there collected data for a while, um, are you afraid that it will be much harder to compete?
Specifically for Jungle Scout to compete?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think the short answer of it is I'm not too concerned about it. I think on one side, I competition's a really healthy thing for all of us. Like it definitely like pushes Jungle Scout to continue to innovate and think about things differently. So like on one hand, I I I can recognize and I really appreciate that on its own. On the other side of things, the reason I'm not or it's like a healthy level of concern but not overly concerned is for two reasons. One is the the best technologies in the entire world are not good if you don't understand your customers really really well and what you're trying to solve for your customers and ultimately what they're trying to do. And I think that that's something that I'm myself as well as Jungle Scout pride ourselves a lot on is like continuing to stay really close to the customer, understanding what they're ultimately trying to get done, and then being great at kind of like innovating on their behalf to help them get that done. So it's even like the world's brightest engineers or the world's brightest machine learning architects and whatever else, if they don't understand what Amazon sellers are ultimately trying to do,
Yep.
they're not going to be that great at solving their problems. So that's one piece of it. The other piece of it is we our scale kind of gives us a competitive edge in the Amazon space. So about one out of every $10 that flow through Amazon also flow through Jungle Scout. So we have like
Wow.
visibility into 10% of all of Amazon's GMV, which is a very large amount and kind of like gives us this competitive edge of understanding well what's happening on Amazon. On top of that, if we think about just our data collection systems that not even including any customer data, just like external data. This is what's happening on Amazon, other marketplaces, and things like that. It costs over $1 million a month for us to run those data collection pipelines.
Yeah.
So there is another layer of, or kind of another level of barrier to entry
Roadblock.
for kind of
Yeah.
like new competitors. It's like um, most people or like most new startups can't afford $1 million a month for data collection pipelines.
For sure. I guess the one big question that I'm sure you were asked before, but I'm gonna ask again because people will be like, Anatoly, you have to ask it. Um, you have, I mean, I don't know if you agree or not, but I mean, I've been following Amazon for a long time, and the
Mhm.
Amazon, in my opinion, and this is just my opinion, so haters, please. Uh, it's my opinion that Amazon is looking at what you guys are doing, and a lot of the tools that coming natively on Amazon are very similar to what you guys are offering, Jungle
Mhm.
Scout and similar companies. Uh, so I guess there's my if I would be Greg Mercer right now, I would have a constant fear year over year that Amazon is building. Amazon has all the data on its own, on its own data center. So I would be a little afraid that Amazon can take it all from me at some point and just create those native tools. And they're already doing it with a brand registry. Now you have like a research tool for keywords. All those tools that you guys are championed so well start to appear on Amazon natively. Um, is there any fear around that? How do you see that?
It's a really great question. I I used to lose a lot of sleep over this kind of in the
Yeah,
earlier days. And where I stand with it today is I kind of view Amazon now as any other competitor. Like I view Amazon kind of like I view Helium 10, for example,
yeah,
that we need to continue to innovate on behalf of our customers and stay one step ahead of them and move faster and constantly like be at the bleeding edge of what's possible and how we can help the customers. And we actually see this happen. Like use the example of kind of that opportunity finder thing on Amazon. And it's funny, it was obvious that they took a lot of inspiration from our tool when they were designing it because
yeah,
there's so many similarities. They even like call it a lot of the same stuff. Like
yes,
they call product research product scouting
yeah,
and things like that, which is pretty funny.
yeah,
And but I think we have seen that we're able to continue to stay ahead of them. A great example is if we use like an AI example is at the very start of this year, so 8 or 9 months ago, we came out with like the AI powered listing builder that took into account keyword search volumes and all those different types of things. Amazon announced 1 or 2 weeks ago that they were
yeah,
releasing something similar. Um, in my opinion, it still kind of has some shortfalls compared to ours, but I think that that's a good example that if we can continue to stay 9 months or a year ahead of Amazon and like we're leading the way of what's possible and helping customers and stuff, I'm cool with that. Like I think that it's not um it's not overly difficult to be a company that copies kind of the front runner. What's really difficult is to kind of be the front runner that's like
yeah.
continuing to push those limits.
I can imagine those meetings at Amazon. Somebody's like, "I have a great idea. Let's have." I already have a UI ready. I have everything. I just figured out myself. Here you guys go. Let's go do it. Wow. Yeah,
Yeah. One of the
but
things that's funny is that, we now have a lot of people that work at Jungle Scout that used to work at Amazon and Seller Central. Like, for example, our CTO was at, Amazon for 10 years, and he was leading, the whole engineering team in front of Seller Central. So it's, kind of through that, not just him, but, a whole bunch of people that we talked to that used to be there or there currently. It's kind of fun to get a little bit of an inside scoop of how they operate and how they think, and it's pretty clear to me that like we're just way more nimble and way closer in touch with what sellers need than what Amazon is. And I think that as long as we can continue to maintain that, I'm not concerned about them as more than what I
yeah,
would be like any other competitor.
I would completely agree. In my other life, I help billion-dollar companies and governments and some startups to help manage their teams. So I know how slow they are,
Hmm.
and I know how decisions are made. You need like sign off of like 100 people. So I don't think you guys should be worried about that. Again, the other question that it's on my mind. Do you guys have access to Amazon? Like, if something is breaking, can you just pick up the phone and say, Jeff, the thing is break? I mean, it's not Jeff anymore, but let's say some Jeff. You say, Jeff, the things
Hmm.
are breaking. Can you please bring this API back because our tool is not working? Do you have that
Hmm.
opportunity?
We do. We have now a really good relationship with Amazon. They've kind of told us that we're the largest user of their API, and as a result, we kind of get early access to stuff, and we have pretty tight feedback loops with them as far as what we could use or need, or what's working well or what doesn't. And they've like when Jungle Scout first came out, they pretty much gave no attention at all to third party tool providers. It just pretty much didn't exist. The APIs were pretty old and slow, and I don't know, they just didn't really pay any attention to like these third party tool providers. But really within the past, it's really only probably been 2 or 3 years. They've really put a lot more focus and investment on building out the ecosystem and the third party tools. And with that, there's a whole bunch of people that are kind of thinking about, their APIs and how companies like Jungle Scout are using them. And since that has happened, we have much better two-way communication with them.
Awesome. Um, I guess I wanna get to your entrepreneurial journey a bit. I think the big issue that it might not be an issue, but to me it seems like an issue. Um, you are the face of Jungle Scout. You are this visionary leader behind it. So to me, Greg Mercer and Jungle Scout is like synonymous, I would say. And you build it from ground up with like $1,000 investment. Do you have this? I don't remember the term, but it's like CEO curse, where you are the face of the company and you're like a visionary. I mean, you 100% are visionary. Are you afraid that if you step away from the company that it won't work and you always have to be there, like the decisions cannot be made without you? Um, yeah, that's a question.
Yeah, this is a really great question. And something that I actually don't get asked too often, but definitely something that I think about. Um, I've really probably just within the past year or two, I spend much more time thinking about like the greatest companies in the world and how they're built and how they're scaled, like far beyond what the initial founders have done or what they really drove. And a visionary founder can be have a really, really huge impact on a company. Like Elon Musk is the greatest example of that, right?
Yeah,
I don't think any of his companies would be doing as well as they have without him. But
100%.
then there are other examples too. Like actually, Jeff Bezos is a great example of it as as far as building a culture that can outlast the founder of the company. And I think actually Amazon's like one of the best companies at that. They've they've instilled their leadership principles, which is like Amazon's core values, into the company so deeply, and everyone thinks about them all the time. And it's kind of uh, almost like a religion that they live by internally at the company. And I used to think like building a culture was almost a little bit of a cheesy thing or it wasn't very important or stuff like that.
Yep.
And now I'm much more of the camp that that's ultimately how you build really great long lasting companies that can like continue to thrive after the founder moves on to do something else. So really just within the past year or two, I've been much more intentional about that at Jungle Scout. I was much more intentional about kind of like writing out the principles that I want everyone at Jungle Scout to live by. We talk about them a lot. We do performance reviews where they're rated around these. People give lots of feedback how they can embody these principles better. And I think there's still plenty of work left to do there, but I have even just in the 1 or 2 years where I've been focusing on this a lot more, I've already started to see a change, which is pretty cool.
Nice. That actually leads to my next question that I wanted to ask. What are some of the core principles and values that Jungle Scout lives by?
Yeah. So a few of my favorite ones are be scrappy, so do more with less. I started this off as a bootstrap company. I'm very a scrappy person. Figure out ways to make things happen, and that's something I want everyone inside of the company to live by. We have another one that I call entrepreneurship. So it's kind of like being an entrepreneur, but inside of a larger organization. So you can really embody a lot of the same mindset and principles as an entrepreneur does, as far as extreme ownership or just figuring out ways to make things happen, or just kind of different, typically entrepreneurial type um, uh, attributes and apply those inside of a company. So that's one that we talk a lot about. Some of the other ones are I'm a big fan of this jungle principle is just called clarity. And it's I'm a big fan of um, being great at writing and speaking about things, both from a high level, so broad topics, as well as the finer details, and being able to explain them very clearly and simply, or be able to speak on whatever level is needed. And actually, at Jungle Scout now, we do quite a bit of writing. So it's a remote first culture.
Nice.
And I'm a huge fan of um, writing your thoughts down on paper or down in not on paper but on the computer to share with people as opposed to more meetings. I think
Yeah.
that one, it drives clarity of thought. When you're forced to write something out, it's like, wait, what was I trying to get to there, or whatever else. It also is, I think, a much more efficient way to share information or knowledge, or just like all align on something as opposed to a meeting. So those are a few of them. I think there's seven
Beautiful.
in total, but those are three that maybe are my favorite, or they were the first ones to jump to mind.
I like the scrappy one. I haven't heard that before. That's a very cool one because being entrepreneur and being scrappy, I think those come hand to hand. You not always have access to funding or to tools or to people. You need to figure out how to get the ball rolling. It's beautiful.
Hmm.
Um, Jungle Scout right now, maybe it's already increased, but it was over 250 employees at the time I last heard one of your interviews. You were saying in January at least, probably have more because you guys are growing fast. I geek out about the process and how to run teams. That's what I consult and do in my everyday life. So for me, it's very interesting when you grow, it's much harder to keep a higher quality and getting things delivered on time. Hence, big companies like Amazon, they're 1 year behind you because it takes a lot of time to push stuff out to make sure it's high quality. So, what are some of the things that you guys do in Jungle Scout to make sure that you have a high quality product and delivered on time? In terms of the process, I guess.
Yeah, great question. Um, I'm trying to think kind of what do we do that maybe is more unique at Jungle Scout, or maybe things that your listeners haven't heard before? I mean, honestly, a big piece of it is really pushing these core values that we have, and those like driving how everyone behaves and interacts. Something else is something else that I've seen make a big difference is so we have about maybe 100 or 150 on our product and engineering teams. Those are like product managers and engineers and UX designers. And every one of them, no matter whether you're a VP or an entry level engineer, is required to speak with three customers every single week.
Wow, that's
And
amazing.
yeah, so it works out to be about 3 hours of their week is spent talking to either customers of ours or prospective customers, like people that could potentially become a customer. And I think this is just so important because I've just seen in so many companies, and honestly, there was a little point in Jungle Scouts history where I felt like we were getting a little bit like this as well, where as the company grows, people start to feel like it's the job of someone else, usually the job of a product manager or maybe the director of product or whatever, to understand what the customer wants or needs. And I think that's a really dangerous and bad thing. When everyone understands the customer well, or at least is speaking to them a lot, or like running ideas by them or testing things with them, they they're able to kind of innovate on their behalf or think more creatively about how to go about solving the problem. So when everyone on the product teams aren't talking to the customer, and like at other companies, sometimes that's just like the PM's job. What typically happens is like the engineers are delivered a set of requirements and asked to build something. And like we hire really, really smart and amazing engineers, and it's almost selling them short to just give them a set of requirements and ask them to build it, because they're all really great problem solvers and they can think about different ways to do things. And If there's a part of the requirements that are kind of fuzzy or hazy or not really clear, they usually know how to go about solving that in a great way without like needing to go back to the PM to ask for more clarity around or something like that because they understand ultimately what the customer's trying to do or what they're trying to get to.
Yeah.
So I don't know. There's a lot of different things that we do, but maybe that's probably one of the things that I've seen have the the highest impact on the quality of development.
Awesome. One thing that I know running my own businesses and consulting a lot of other ones, that one of the biggest bottlenecks and the hardest thing to do is to hire. You say you're hiring amazing engineers. So, what are some of the principles you use to hire amazing people?
The first thing that I'm a huge believer of is um, having recruiters. So we have a team of recruiters, and all they do every day is try to find really great people to hire. And one of the, or I think the largest reason that this is important is the best employees in the world already have jobs and they're probably not looking for a new job. So
Yeah,
you need to be thinking about how to find them and like outreach to them as opposed to expect them to apply on a job board or whatever
yeah,
else. So I think that's really important. But I also think that usually when teams are hiring, they are feeling like there's too much to do and they're really swamped and there's not enough hours in the day. And if like you're giving them mediocre candidates and or that team's partially responsible for like the outreach or finding the people or things like that, what I saw was that it led to people being more um or like they were willing to settle for something less than the best because they were like, I'm really overwhelmed, I don't have time for more interviews, something like that, and like let's just take this person and bring them on the team. Whereas if you have really great recruiters, whoever's doing the hiring knows there's like an they can interview as many people as they want. It's like unlimited supply. We can always continue to find more people. They'll be more picky about getting the right people on the team. And then I think after that, it's just about holding and maintaining really high standards once the people come aboard.
awesome. Do you do anything interesting, I guess, unusual to retain those employees to make sure that they don't some other team of recruiters do not call them up and invite them to the competitive office?
Yeah. So employee retention at Jungle Scout's really high. It's way higher than most of the industry standards or industry benchmarks. And I don't think there's any one thing that leads to that. I think it's a combination of um, one is giving, or let's see, like the things that people are working on every day, almost all of them really enjoy what they're working on and love the problems that they're solving. And they have a lot of ownership around solving the problems well and creating something really great. And that's like one of the ways to, have really happy members of your team. Beyond that, I think like the general culture is pretty strong at Jungle Scout as far as they feel like they're working with really smart people. They kind of enjoy the level of transparency and the mission that we're working on and the customers that we're helping. And I don't know if there's any one specific thing that I feel like this is what has led to all of our success with team members or retaining them, but more so it's like a healthy balance of these different items that I think are important to employees.
Awesome. Um, the other sort of questions I have is like getting in the brain of CEO. We call it that way. Um,
Okay.
I find that one of the most complicated thing, correct me if I'm wrong, as a founder, is making decisions, and you have to make decisions every day, nonstop. So, are there some strategies or templates you use to make decisions?
The biggest one is actually one of our core values. The core value is err on the side of a decision, then test and iterate. And what I believe is decisions that are fairly are like lower impact and or reversible, it's much better to try to make a decision relatively quickly. So I don't mean like within the first minute, but the same day, or not push that decision off until the next day. So it's like, have vigorous, challenging, diverse debates around it and then make a decision and move forward with it. And I think that's important because it's always easier for people to not make a decision or come up with a reason why they can't. And it's really ultimately because they're like a little bit scared. But that can really slow things down a lot. And the thing about software and really about most modern businesses is most of the decisions that you make are either reversible. So, like, if we make a change to our product and our customers don't like it, we can roll that back or make another change to it, right?
Yeah,
And that's true with a lot of things inside of the business. So, I think it's important to err on the side of a decision and make a decision, move forward with it, and realize that the amount of time that you save by making a decision relatively quickly as opposed to pushing it off is better than um, not doing so.
yeah. Just make fail fast, I guess. Um,
Yeah,
yeah.
I'm a fan of that. Fail fast.
Yeah. The other thing that, I mean, I'm as a founder myself, and I know many people struggle with it, that when you're a founder, people tell you what you want to hear more than they actually want to tell you what's happening, if you know what I
Mm.
mean. Just because their careers on the line, sometimes reputation on the line, they want to appeal to yourself. So they often tell you things, they try to sugarcoat the things that are not going that well, and sometimes tell you things that I mean, sometimes don't tell you the thing that you need to hear. Uh, have you noticed that, or and if so, have you have any? Do you have any advice how to deal with that?
I think that can creep in from time to time, and I think it has with me, especially with maybe newer employees or more junior employees that don't know me as well. Like, my C team and those who I work most closely with every day, I think are much less likely to do that, and I feel pretty confident that they don't do that often or don't do that much, and I think the reason for that is it, feels to both of us like it's a that we're a little bit more like peers, and that it's beneficial for them to bring their problems and their challenges and things like that to me because I'm going to help them work through them and help them solve them. And that it doesn't do either of us any good to like shove those under the rug or not bring them up. So, and during most of our one-on-ones and most of our meetings and things like that, we do typically focus on the challenges and the problems and kind of like collaboratively work on solving them. And I think that just over time, a level of trust is built that they feel comfortable bringing those things up and know that I expect them to do so. And what I don't want is for them to just show up and act like everything's great because it's a business with challenges and problems. And that's what we're doing here every day, is solving those challenges. So it doesn't do anyone any good to kind of hide those. So
Awesome.
let's see. If I were to summarize all of that, I think it's about the trust and building that collaborative type environment where they feel like you're there to help them.
Yeah, makes sense. Uh, talking a little bit about more talk a little bit more vulnerable note. I read in a bunch of your interviews that you experienced burnout quite a few times. I think the first time I looked at your story on Jungle Scout blog or somewhere else, you had like a photo of you with like, yeah, like looking really burned out. I don't know if it's still
I
there
think I
or
had
not.
shingles on my face.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm like, I still remember that was like 5 years ago, and I'm still like, wow, Jungle Scout, being Jungle Scout CEO is hard. So I want to talk about burnout. If you can walk me through some of the lowest points, I guess, you had in your entrepreneurial career, and most importantly, what was the biggest lessons from them that you apply now?
Mm. That photo that you're talking about was probably one of the lowest points, and You're living in Bali right now, right?
Yep. Yep.
That photo was actually taken in Bali. I was living there at the time, and I remember, the doctor there was awesome. They actually, like, drove their scooter over to the villa that I was staying in, and I had shingles on my face, and it was like I had a big swollen eye, and it looked terrible. And I remember the doctor, this Balinese doctor being like, "I think you have shingles, but I'm not quite sure because I've never seen anyone under the age of like 50 years old get shingles." And I was like 25 at the time. And um, it was because I was just kind of working these ridiculous hours and I was really stressed out and all those types of things. I wasn't taking very good care of my body. But I mean, I think that was one of the low points. And I think that over time, I learned to delegate better. I, and honestly, probably the other piece of it is I'm much more disciplined, or I've learned more that I can't perform and operate at a really high level if I don't also take care of myself well. So it's like put your own oxygen mask on before helping others kind of thing. I know that now I always get 8 hours of sleep and I'm much better about eating healthy and just taking good care of my body and my mind. And as a result, I can perform at a higher level. So I think that's really the best advice that I have is just like those times where I was working whatever 18 hours a day and just like these ridiculous hours. I mean, I was sure I was sitting at my computer for a really long time and I was probably like knocking through a whole bunch of smaller tasks, but my mind wasn't operating at like the same level as what it can today by like, taking a little bit better care of it.
Yeah, makes complete sense. Speaking about advice, I think one of your superpowers is to really understand what your market needs, whether it is being building a key locks for scooters and selling them on a day one, creating a Chrome extension, investing like $1,000 and getting 10 sales in your first 24 hours. So for somebody who's listening who are really struggling and like I'm building this product and it doesn't sell, or I'm just struggling to find a market fit. What advice can you give them?
The best advice that I can give them is, first of all, don't get overly attached to your solution. Get overly attached to the customer's pains or the customer's problems. And one of my favorite things to do when I'm speaking with customers or interviewing them is continue to ask why. So they'll be like, I'm struggling with this or I have this challenge, and I'll say why. And they'll go one layer deeper. And then after two or three whys, you typically get to the root problem or the core challenge that they're trying to solve. And what's really interesting about that exercise is that what they started with, the first problem that you were discussing, versus after asking them why a few times and getting to the core of the challenge that they're experiencing, it's usually pretty different. And it's always really, it never ceases to amaze me how this is the case. And to create value for customers and to get good product market fit and to make sales of it, you ultimately need to be solving that challenge or the problem that you get to after asking why a few times or ask after digging a few layers deeper. Customers or just humans in general are usually fairly bad at understanding the deepest sense of what problems or what challenges they have or what they're trying to solve, and especially so about recommending to you solutions for them. So instead, if you can get to the core, the deepest level of what they're experiencing or why they're having those problems, and then think of, like innovate on their behalf, that's what I've always found to be the best way to create something that customers really love, which is ultimately how you create a great business.
Beautiful. I also want to point out that many people just don't talk to their customers at all. They're just like,
Yeah, well, that's a great place to start.
I think I need to build a scooter that can fly. Somebody needs it. I don't know. They will. It's the best product
Uh-huh.
ever. It will change the world. And then nobody buys it. Yeah, that happens all the time. So the last section here is called rapid fire questions. You don't have to answer in a quick sort of maybe rapid fire, not the best name, but I still keep it. So I'm gonna ask you questions. You don't have to answer in short form. Answer as long as you want. The first
Cool.
question is about routines. What are some routines? It could be morning routines, night routines, any routines that help you stay focused and work on your mission.
I walk a lot these days. I walk about 2 hours a day. So I usually start the morning with 30 or 45 minutes of walking, and then usually midday I'll walk for 30 minutes, then I usually walk home from work.
Wow. I do the same actually. I do walk a lot. Definitely recommend for people who are listening. Walking is a superpower.
It's
Um,
great.
any like things you do in the morning, or any particular diets, anything that you learn that works for you well?
I keep a pretty consistent sleep routine. Go to bed every night, usually around 10:30 or so, sleep 8 hours, wake up around 6:30 AM or so. Get out of bed quickly, shower quickly, and then I usually play with my son for a little while, usually go for a walk or go to the park with him or something along those lines. Besides that, I try to live a pretty healthy life. So try to eat fairly healthy, but I'm not like super strict about it or anything.
I
I
see.
just like I don't follow any of the really strict diets, more so just back of my mind that I need to eat healthy.
Makes sense. The other question, a deep one. What are some of the beliefs? It can be any beliefs you want. Can be life beliefs, work beliefs, any beliefs you used to hold, and the time frame you can also choose can be 5 years ago, year ago, month ago that you don't hold anymore.
Ooh, good one. I think I used to believe that there was always a correct or a right answer, and that certain people always knew the right answer, the correct answer. Fast forward today, I believe much more that we live in a very gray world and there's not a right or wrong answer with most things.
Yeah,
And probably also um, to always kind of question everything that you read or hear or listen from someone and understand that they're ultimately just a human too. And it's like one, I always take it as a perspective as
yeah,
opposed to a cold, hard and fast rule.
beautiful. The more you learn, the more you understand that you don't know much.
Mhm.
That's a dilemma of people who learn a lot. Um, if you meet yourself in 2015, and I say 2015 because, as far as I know, that's when you start Jungle Scout. So let's put that. Knowing what you know now, what advice would you give yourself?
Don't forget to have fun. This is a journey, and I believe the purpose of life is to be happy and to find happiness. So I think it's don't forget to do that. And the other advice I would give myself is I think in the early days I was kind of looking for hacks or quick wins or talking to investors. They're always trying to do like financial engineering type stuff. And those can be ways to grow a business to something relatively small or like get a really quick short term type win. But the greatest companies in the world aren't built off short little hacky things or uh, investor advice about financial engineering BS. It's about like building something that customers really, really love. And that's ultimately it.
Yeah,
That's the core of all the greatest companies in the world.
amazing. Speaking about the greatest companies, by some estimates, you build a company that generates about $50 million in revenue a year. How does your life change from being a nomad, traveling around and just scrapping the business together, to becoming a CEO of this big company? We're talking about quality of life, I guess.
Mhm. Honestly, it hasn't really changed that much. I have made quite a bit of money from Jungle Scout. I sold part of it and brought on some investors and got a really nice payday from that and things like that. And I would say it removed some of the financial stress from my life. My wife loves to tell the story about how, like 10 years ago, whenever we would go out to eat, I would give her a hard time about ordering appetizers or the expensive things on the menu or whatever else.
Yeah,
And I no longer do that. That's kind of gone away.
yeah,
So I'd say like some of those types of things um, or some of the financial stress about some of the smaller things have gone away, but honestly, beyond that, my life hasn't changed too much. I still uh, drive the same car pretty much and spend my days most of the same and sit in front of the computer most of the days. So not too much.
beautiful. I think we lost your camera, but I can hear you well, so it's all good.
I don't know what
And
happened.
that brings me to my last question. Good timing of losing camera just in time. According to Greg, how to live a happy and fulfilling life. Oh, I hear you. You're back. I see you now.
Great. Spend your days doing what you love is the most important thing. If
Beautiful.
if you're waking up and feeling like the day is gonna be a grind and you're not looking forward to what you're gonna do, then that will be the case. If you're excited to get out of bed and what you're gonna go work on for the day and how you're gonna spend your day, I think that's the best way to live a fulfilled life.
Amazing. Thank you, Greg. Learned a lot, and I'm honored to have you here. I've been following you for a while, and it's great chatting with you.
Thank you so much for having me on, Anatoly. I've really enjoyed it. It's awesome.
Thank you. Thank you guys for listening, watching. You know where to follow us. Talk to you next one. Bye bye.